Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Super Bowl Sunday. I can tell you guys just love sports, don't you? You just love it. Hey, it's Jersey Sunday, and I love doing Jersey Sunday. I get to see where you guys stand, what you represent, okay? You only had, a couple of you broke the rules, and you wore Giant stuff, just a couple, so it's okay. But most of you are all good. I saw a bunch of Dodger fans out there, and I love it. Dodgers, okay? Any other Dodger fans? We got to work on your guys' energy. It's just kind of like, All right, let me do that. I do this every Super Bowl Sunday. We got two teams playing in the Super Bowl. We got the Chiefs versus the Eagles, and I need to know where you guys stand on this. How many of you want the Chiefs to win today? Again, not very many Chiefs fans. We got Amber out there, just one. Woo, okay. How many of you want the Eagles to win today? Wow, okay. And how many of you are saying, I don't care? Yeah, you guys outnumber the rest of us. You're so much better than us because you're not tied into this. So I will tell you where I stand because I know you really want to know. That's why you came today. But I am going to be rooting for the Chiefs, okay? I got family in Missouri. They're all Chiefs fans. And I think it'd be kind of cool to see a three-peat. If you don't know what that means, they've won 3 in a row, possibly, okay? That's just where I'm at, okay? But it doesn't matter. Whether they win or lose, whoever wins or loses, tomorrow keeps going on, and they'll try again next year, all right? Hey, we're not here for the Super Bowl. We're here for Jesus, all right? We are God's church gathered in his name, and we're going to learn from his word today. And we've been doing this series. We actually started last week called This Is Us. This is Us. And as Pastor Terry mentioned, he started off this series. We have our mission statement, which you guys know is love, grow, reach. We are here to love God and people. We're here to grow to become like Jesus, and we're here to reach people with the good news of Jesus. That's our mission in a nutshell, keeping it real simple, right? That's why we're here. But we have these internal values that we have as a church. These are things that all Christians should be doing, but things that are core values to MCC, core values to our leadership. When we are doing things, when we're looking at positions for leadership, we want people to be living this out, and this is how all of us should be living, like I said. And these are our core values real quick. I'm going to go over them. Pastor Terry did last week. But first off is we will honor Christ and his church with integrity. We will do everything we can to reach people for Jesus. We will always bring our best. We serve, we are generous, we are faith-filled risk takers, and we love to laugh. We like to have fun. We think it's the most joyful thing when we serve together as a church. That's our values in a nutshell really quickly for you. Now, last week, Pastor Terry expanded and talked about being a church of integrity. And what we're going to do today is I want to focus on our core value of being a church who serves. Being a church who serves. This is what we say. We are not spiritual consumers. We are spiritual contributors. The church does not exist for us. We are the church, and we exist for the world. That's why we are here. And we're going to expand on that a little bit today. But before we get to that, we're going to go to the source, and we're going to look at what Jesus has to say about serving. Because if you want to know anything about anything, you go to Jesus, okay? He's the guy who has all the answers. And Jesus had a lot to say about serving. So we're going to be in Mark chapter 10. If you have your Bibles, you can turn there. And before we start reading that today, I want to give you a little context of what's happening in Mark 10. This story takes place, it's towards the end of Jesus' earthly ministry. He's been doing ministry for 3 years. He has accomplished a lot. He has done a lot of miracles, walking on water, casting out demons, healing people, raising people from the dead, preaching and just blowing people's minds with his power and authority. This is what Jesus has been doing. But just recently, Jesus did maybe his most famous miracle, which was raising Lazarus from the dead. Jesus had raised a few people from the dead, but they were kind of, I like to say, fresh dead, okay? Or if you want to say Princess Bride, they were only mostly dead, okay? Lazarus had been dead for a few days. So he was like dead in the tomb. It was over. Like even people were like, Jesus, don't mess with that. He's going to stink, man. Don't even try, right? And Jesus went in, raised Lazarus from the dead. So, I mean, amazing thing. Blowing people's minds again. So Jesus at this point is he's the most popular he's ever been. Most famous he's ever been. Okay, people are looking at Jesus saying he has all power, he has all authority, he is raising people from the dead. This guy is doing something, right? And it's during this is actually Passover time. So Jesus is now heading to Jerusalem to celebrate Passover. And you guys probably know this story if you've grown up in the church, but this is what we call Palm Sunday, okay? And Jesus is heading into Jerusalem, and everybody's gathering around him because they've heard of him. They're waving palm branches. They're shouting his name, Hosanna. They're just praising Jesus because they're so excited about who he is and what he's doing. And it's in the midst of this that our story takes place right now. This is Mark chapter 10, okay? Starting in verse 32. It says, they were now on the way up to Jerusalem, and Jesus was walking ahead of them. The disciples were filled with awe and the people following behind were overwhelmed with fear. Taking the 12 disciples aside, Jesus once more began to describe everything that was about to happen to him. "Listen," he said, "we're going up to Jerusalem, where the Son of Man will be betrayed to the leading priests and the teachers of religious law. They will sentence him to die and hand him over to the Romans. They will mock him, spit on him, flog him with the whip, and kill him. But after 3 days, he will rise again." So Jesus, it's in the midst of this. It's like a crazy celebration, right? Crowds all around him. His disciples are in awe. People are like almost in fear of the power he has. It's in the midst of this. Jesus pulls his disciples aside real quick and says, "Hey, I want you to know what's about to happen. We're heading into Jerusalem. I'm going to be betrayed. I'm going to be arrested. I am going to be killed. But I'm going to rise again 3 days later." Okay? Telling his disciples this. And the disciples don't get it. Okay? I don't think they want to hear it. I don't think they want to listen. It just doesn't compute to them. It doesn't make sense because they're looking at the crowds. They're looking at everything that's going on. They're saying, "Jesus, you're the guy. You got all power. Look at the crowds around you. You just raised Lazarus from the dead. I mean, you're super popular right now. This is the moment, man, where everything's going to happen. Everything's going to fall into place. It's going to happen." So in their mind, Jesus saying, "I'm going to be arrested and killed," that doesn't make any sense. Jesus, bad things aren't going to happen to you. How could a bad thing like that happen to you, right? In fact, you're not going to die. We know what you're going to do. You're going to become king. And you're going to sit on a big, glorious throne, and we as Israel are going to rule the world. That's why you're here, right? That's what's going to happen. None of this dying nonsense. That doesn't make any sense. But you're going to become king, all right? So the disciples, they kind of ignore what Jesus is saying, that he's going to be arrested, betrayed, crucified, all of that. They ignore it, and they're saying, no, this is what's going to happen. This is what's in their minds. You're going to become king. You're going to rule, okay? So Jesus, he finishes telling his disciples this very serious stuff, right? I'm going to be betrayed. I'm going to be arrested. I'm going to be killed. He tells them this, to tell them exactly what's going to happen. They get back on the road. They start walking towards Jerusalem. And here's what happens immediately following that. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came over and spoke to him. "Teacher," they said, "we want you to do us a favor." "What is your request?" he asked. They replied, "When you sit on your glorious throne, we want to sit in places of honor next to you, one on your right and the other on your left." So again, this is like 2 minutes after Jesus just poured his heart out to his disciples, explaining exactly what's going to happen to him. Betrayed, arrested, killed, rising again 3 days later. Just like 2 minutes after this. And James and John are thinking to themselves, you know what? This is a good time to go ask Jesus a favor, right? This is the time. We've been waiting. Now let's go ask him. And they're saying, "Hey, Jesus, we know you said you're going to die and stuff, but we have a plan. When you're on your throne and when you're ruling the world, we want to be the two guys right next to you, on your right and on your left, okay? If you're number one, we know you're number one, but we'd like to be number 2 and 3, okay? So basically, if you're president, we want to be like vice president and, Secretary of State. That's who we are. You got the power, but we're right underneath you, okay?" And they asked Jesus this in the midst of all of this, right? And Jesus says to them, he says, "You don't know what you're asking. Are you able to drink from the bitter cup of suffering I'm about to drink? Are you able to be baptized with the baptism of suffering I must be baptized with?" "Oh, yes," they replied. "We are able." Again, these guys have no idea what they're talking about, right? Jesus plainly told them, "I'm going to be arrested, I'm going to be killed." And Jesus is asking, "Can you handle that? Are you able to do that?" And they're saying, "Yeah, we can do that," right? And they're going to find out they can't, right? They don't handle this because actually just a few days Jesus is arrested and every single one of his disciples, including James and John, runs off and abandons Jesus, right? Every single one of them. They run away, they desert Jesus. But Jesus is saying, do you understand what's going on? Can you handle this? And they think, yes, because we think we know better than you, Jesus. We know what's going to happen. And then Jesus tells them, he says, "You will indeed drink from my bitter cup and be baptized with my baptism of suffering. But I have no right to say who will sit on my right or on my left. God has prepared those places for the ones he has chosen." Jesus basically, he gives them a little insight into what's going to happen to these guys. He says, "James and John, you are going to go through some stuff. You're going to be baptized with the baptism of suffering." And if you know church history, James was actually the first disciple to be martyred for his faith. And John was the very last. He was actually, a lot happened to him, but he wrote the book of Revelation. But these guys followed Jesus, and they went through suffering for Jesus. They don't understand it yet. They don't understand what's going to happen. But Jesus basically tells them, hey, that's going to happen, but now's not the time. We're not going to talk about that. That's not what we're here for at this moment. I got more important things to do. And a few minutes later, here's what happens, because the other disciples hear about what James and John had asked. And the Bible says that when the 10 other disciples heard what James and John had asked, they were indignant. They were indignant, okay? So this doesn't mean that the disciples were mad that James and John would ask such a stupid question to Jesus about being number 2 and number 3. They were mad that they didn't think of it first, okay? They're indignant, like a little insulted, like, oh, they got it there first. We want to do that too, right? They're angry with them, all right? They all want to be number 2, number 3. They all want to sit right next to Jesus on that glorious throne as they're ruling the world, right? That's what those guys want. So what happens is they start arguing amongst themselves about who's the best and who's the greatest and who's Jesus going to pick to be number 2 and number 3. Who do you think? It's going to be me. No, it's going to be me. I've done more. Well, I walked on water. Yeah, well, who cares about that, right? Whatever, they're just arguing amongst themselves, okay? And again, Jesus, they're on their way to Jerusalem. They're almost there. Jesus had just told them, I'm going to be betrayed, arrested, crucified. I'm going to die. I'm going to rise again 3 days later. And all they're thinking about is themselves. All they're worried about is who's the greatest. Who's going to have the power and the control and the authority like with Jesus? Who's going to get that? That's all they're thinking about. So Jesus hears them arguing, and he says something to them. And what he says next is for all of us who are followers of Jesus. And he says this. He says, you know that the rulers in this world lord it over their people, and officials flaunt their authority over those under them. He's basically telling them, hey, you know how the world works, right? Person at the top has all the power, they have all the authority, they have all the stuff, and they make everybody else work for them and serve them, and they give them stuff too, right? That's how it works, right? Do you guys understand that? And the disciples are thinking, yeah, Jesus, we get that. That's why we want to be number 2 and number 3. We want people to work for us, to serve us. That's how the world works. So when you're king, we want to be at the top, so everybody's doing stuff for us. That's what we want. We understand that's how the world works. That's why we're asking you these questions. And then Jesus says this, but among you, it will be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first among you must be the slave of everyone else. So Jesus is saying, you know how the world works. We get that. We see that all the time. That's common. But among you, it will be different. Among my followers, among my disciples, among the people who say I'm a follower of Jesus, it is going to be different. In my kingdom, in my church, it will be different. You're going to serve one another. You're going to be servants. And I'm sure when the disciples hear this, they're thinking, what are you talking about, Jesus? Right? What do you mean? If we're going to lead, then we have to serve. If we want to be on top, we got to be on the bottom. It doesn't make any sense. Servants are at the bottom, and Jesus even talks about slaves. If there's something lower than a servant, it's a slave. And he's saying, that's the lowest of the low, is servants and slaves. And you're telling us that's how we should be? We want to be great in your kingdom, we got to serve. We want to be leaders, we got to serve. That's what we're called to do. And Jesus says this then. He says, even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and to give his life as a ransom for many. The Son of Man is Jesus referring to himself. That's what he liked to refer to himself as, the Son of Man. And Jesus is the greatest. He is number 1, right? He has all power, he has all authority in heaven and on earth. It's all his. But Jesus came down to this earth to serve and lay his life down as a ransom for many. He didn't come to be served, but to serve. And the disciples at this point, they still didn't get it. They didn't understand what Jesus was saying. They didn't understand that Jesus would literally lay down his life in just a few days. They didn't realize he would die for the sins of the world. But once Jesus rose again, they understood it. And they got it. And they all clicked, and it all clicked in their heads. But at this moment, they didn't understand. But a few days later, they come into Jerusalem, and they're in this upper room. And they are eating the Passover meal. And this is just a few hours before Jesus is going to be betrayed and arrested and crucified. He's got just a couple hours with his disciples to tell them a few more things before all this happens. And Jesus takes time, one more time, to make sure they understand what it means to serve. You think about this, you could say almost this is like his last words. Obviously, he came back and he had more words. But the last few things he wanted to say is, this is so important. I'm going to die in just a couple hours, but I want you to get this. And here's what Jesus does. This is in John chapter 13 with his disciples in the upper room. Scripture says that Jesus got up from the table. He took off his robe. He wrapped a towel around his waist, and he poured water into a basin. And then he began to wash the disciples' feet, drying them with the towel he had around him. It's an interesting thing because I'm sure as Jesus was washing his disciples' feet, they're probably freaking out. This was a very, very submissive servant thing to do. And they're looking at Jesus, who is washing their feet. And they know what Jesus can do. They've seen what he can do with those hands, how he can heal people, how he can cast out demons, how he can raise the dead. But now he's using those hands to wash their feet. Their dirty, stinky, smelly feet that they've been walking on roads. And Jesus is getting down, he's washing his disciples' feet. And they begin to protest, actually, and they're saying, Jesus, you shouldn't be doing this. And Peter actually said, hey, Jesus, no, don't do that. And Jesus tells him, hey, Peter, this needs to happen. And it's funny because Peter, you know how Peter's always all in or all out? That's kind of how he is. He's like, okay, Jesus, then wash all of me, right? And Jesus says, hey, relax, man, okay? I'm just going to wash your feet. We're going to go from there, okay? But this needs to be done, okay? And again, the disciples are looking at what Jesus is doing, understanding who he is, and that he's serving them in this way, being a servant to his disciples, living out what he had taught them on that road just a few days earlier. And after washing their feet, in John 13:12, it says, after washing their feet, he put on his robe again, and he sat down and he asked, do you understand what I am doing? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, because that's what I am. And since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I have given you an example to follow. Do as I have done to you. I tell you the truth, slaves are not greater than their master, nor is the messenger more important than the one who sends the message. Now that you know these things, God will bless you for doing them. Jesus is Lord and Master, and he just washed his disciples' feet. He sets this example for them. He sets this example for all followers, where he's saying, follow my example. Serve like I serve. Serve people, and you'll be blessed if you do this. This is what I've called you to do. So here's the big thing we got to take away today, okay? We are called to serve like Jesus served. If you're a follower of Jesus, you are called to serve like Jesus served. This is us. This is Christ's church. This is who God has called us to be, to serve like he served. We are called to serve others. Now, this doesn't mean, because what happens in our culture here in the United States, our 21st century American culture, we'll have like a serve day, you know, and we'll kind of check the box. Okay, I did my serve day for the year. Done. I'm good. Now I can wait till next year, or maybe once a month, or whatever it is, okay? That's not what it's talking about. This is a mindset. This is a culture. This is who we are. Again, this is us. This is something we do 24/7. And this is what we are. We serve like Jesus served. Now, when we do this and we live this out as a church, there are going to be two ways this kind of plays out. Okay, two ways that we need to understand this. And the first thing is this. We are called to serve in God's church. As followers of Jesus, we are called to serve in God's church. Now, here's the thing we got to make really clear. What is the church? We talk about this a lot here at MCC. We want to make it really clear because what happens is we have this mentality of what church is. Church is not a building. Church is not an event. We are the church. Church is people. Church is us. So I want to make this clear. You don't go to Mountain Christian Center. You are Mountain Christian Center. You understand that? If this building burned down today, we would still be Mountain Christian Center. We would still gather together. We would still be here. So it's not a building. It's not an event. This right now is not Mountain Christian Center. We are Mountain Christian Center. If you attend this church, you say, I'm a follower of Jesus and I attend this church, you are Mountain Christian Center. And we are called to serve one another. Every single one of us, if we are followers of Jesus, part of this church, we are called to serve one another in this church. 1 Peter 4:10 says this, that God has given each of you a gift from his great variety of spiritual gifts. Use them well to serve one another. God has given every single one of us in this room a gift. And our gifts are very different. Some of you might have the gift of singing, some not. Some might have the gift of hospitality, others not. Some maybe the gift of teaching or speaking, others not, right? Some maybe just have the gift of just picking up trash, serving, whatever it may be, right? Others not. But we all have gifts, and we need to use those gifts to serve one another. That's what God has created us for, and that's the example that Jesus set. The problem, again, is, in our culture here in the United States, many of us don't think this way. We have a consumer-driven society, kind of, don't we, right? Where we get what we want, how we want it, the way we want it. It's kind of like Burger King, have it your way, right? So we have this mentality even with church, where we come to church, and we use this word, and it's innocent, But we have people who church shop, right? How many of you have ever been church shopping? It's okay, I've been church shopping, okay, it's okay. When we go and we kind of check out churches, right? The first time I ever got to do that, because I grew up as a pastor's kid, so I never got to go to any other churches, but when I went to college, it was the first time ever, I was like, I can go to any church I want. I went to like 30 different churches, because I was just excited to go visit like all these churches. It was really cool, okay? And I was kind of church shopping until I found the church I want, and then I stuck with it and I plugged in, right? But we have this church shopping. And what we do is people will come to church, they say, well, I want something that meets all of my needs for me, right? Because it's about me. I need something for my kids. The chairs better be comfortable. They better have good coffee. The heat shouldn't be too hot, shouldn't be too cold, just right for me, right? The sound should be really right where I want it, right? When we worship, it better be songs I like, right? The pastor, when he does a message, should be kind of funny, should be kind of good, but I should take a little point, but not to make me too guilty, whatever it may be, right? And it's just all about me, 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 me. And we come in, and they just consume, spiritual consumers. Sit down, never give, never serve, just take, me, 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 all right? And unfortunately, a lot of Christians do this, just spiritual consumers. I come, I don't contribute at all, I just take. It's all about me. And if I don't like it, I'm going to go to the next church and take until they do something I don't like, then I'll go to the next church, then take until they do something I don't like, and then they bounce around, all right? That's not who we're supposed to be. That's not what we're called to be. That is not the church. The church is people, right? And Jesus said we're called to serve like he served. Now, we have the spiritual consumers, those who take, and then we have the opposite end of the spectrum, which is many of you. We have spiritual contributors, people who show up and they serve like Jesus served. People who come and they love Jesus and they love you and they just say, I'm going to give and I'm going to participate and I'm going to serve like Jesus, right? I love it because we have our worship team up here today. What were they doing today? You know, they come on Thursday nights, they practice. They come here at 8 a.m. every Thursday. They get all the sound checked, everything, or every Sunday they get everything set up. They come up here and they worship. They're not doing it just because they like playing music. They're doing it because they love Jesus and they love you. And they're serving you when they do that, right? Many of you have kids over at in the kids hall right now. You know, on an average Sunday, we have about 40 kids every Sunday over there in that hallway. 40 kids, right? And there's a bunch of people over there taking care of our kids right now. We don't see them. We don't know what's going on over there, but they're taking care of our kids so that we can be in here hearing from God's word. Why do they do that? They love Jesus, they love kids, they love you, and they want to serve this church, right? Even our coffee shop today, we had the Ellis family. It was the whole family today. Mom, dad, all the kids together. Got here early, got all the coffee on, got it all ready for you guys. Why? Because they love Jesus and they love you, and they're serving this church, right? They are not spiritual consumers, they're contributors. And I could go on and on. We have countless others, people who serve at family, our host teams, our small group leaders, our life group leaders. There's so many of you who do so much, right? But that's the way we're supposed to be. If we are a part of Mountain Christian Center, if we are a part of God's church, if we are a follower of him, we are called to serve like Jesus served. We're called to serve others. And here's what I want to challenge you. If you're here today and you're looking at yourself and you're going, oh man, on a scale of 1 to 10, am I a spiritual consumer or a spiritual contributor? And you're falling more towards that spiritual consumer side where you just show up and take, and you don't serve, you don't do anything else. It's time for you to step up and do what you're called to do. It's time for you to serve, all right? It's time for you to start doing something. And ask the question, how can I help? Just look around. I'll give you some options. I'll give you some examples here of how you can help. I already mentioned this, right? We have a kids department on Sunday and on Wednesday night. We got a ton of kids coming, and we're growing, right? We have so many babies. People just keep having babies, okay? My wife and I weren't included, but there's like tons of babies, right? We're actually getting to the point where they're not even fitting in the room anymore. We're trying to figure out like what to do with all these babies we're having, right? We got babies who just need people to look after them. We have kids, kindergarten to 5th grade, who just need people to be there and love them. We have our Royal Rangers and Impact Girls on Wednesday nights where there's just kids, boys and girls there who need men, especially men. Men, we need you to rise up and start doing stuff, okay? But men, step up and go and love those boys. Be spiritual fathers to them, okay? We have lots of opportunities with our kids. We have our host teams, our greeters, our ushers. They're open doors for you. They pass out bulletins. They take the offering. They're just there to point you wherever you need to go. They're here to serve, right? Media, if you got skills with worship, you can come up and sing. Unfortunately, not all of us have that kind of skill, right? But if you have that skill, you can use it. We need people who can run the sound. We need people who can run the slides. We need people who can take pictures and photography, all this kind of stuff in this modern church that we have, right? We have people who do the cafe. There's just so much where you can lead Bible studies, you can do life groups, you can just whatever, right? And it doesn't even have to be an official thing. If you're out here and you see trash on the ground, we pick it up. Why? Because we serve, right? After church, sometimes we ask, hey, can you stack chairs? And if you're able, you do. Because why? We serve. That's what we do. That's who we are. We serve. So I challenge you again, start serving. Don't just sit around waiting for something to fall into your lap. So many times we do that where it's, okay, well, I got to wait for the perfect, like the stars to align. God's going to open the clouds and point me right where I need to go. Jesus already told you what to do. Serve like he served. Do it, right? Just step up and start doing something. But if you want more information, you want to start serving, here's what you can do. There's that card in the seat back in front of you. Put your name on it. Say, I want to serve. You can even check the boxes. There's a bunch on there. Drop it in the boxes you go, or take it to the Connect Center, all right? You can go on our website. You can also see all the places you can serve. Click one of them, sign up, do it, okay? You can also go to the Connect Center after service, talk to them, say, I want to serve. I don't know where. Can you help me? We will find you a spot, right? All of us are called to serve in God's church. And if we all step up, we all do it, we're all going to be taking care of everything. It's going to be great. It's going to be perfect. It's going to be the way God intended it. It's going to be the way Jesus wants us to live. We're going to serve like he served. So we are called to serve in God's church. But serving like Jesus doesn't stop once these doors open and church ends and we walk out. It doesn't end there. Because we're called to serve in God's church, but we are also called to serve as God's church. We are God's church. We are God's people. We're called to serve together in the church, take care of one another. But as God's church, we're supposed to go out into the world and serve. Matthew 5:14, Jesus himself says, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." When you serve like Jesus served, people will see your good deeds. They will see that you're committed to Jesus. They will see that you are different. They will see that you actually love people and care about people, and you walk the walk and you talk the talk, right? They will see those things, and what happens? God will be glorified. We don't do it so we get the credit. We don't do it so that we can be saved. We're already saved. Jesus did that. We're doing this because we are saved, because we want people to know Jesus. That's why we go out there. So I tell this to my students all the time. I've maybe said it to you, but we should be the hardest working, best people out there. When people look at us, they're like, man, they just love people. They serve. They take care. They don't do anything about themselves. It's not about them. It's about others. That's how we're called to be. So I challenge you, when you're at home, serve. Husbands, serve your wives. Wives, serve your husbands. Parents, serve your kids. Kids, serve your parents, right? When you're at work, you serve. You serve your employees, you serve your boss, you serve your coworkers, you serve the people who are coming in the doors, whatever it may be, right? When you're at school, you serve your friends, you serve your teachers, you serve the staff and faculty, whatever it may be, wherever we are, we serve. We are God's church in this community. And when we leave this place, we're taking Mountain Christian Center with us, because we are Mountain Christian Center, and we're going out and we're being Jesus in our community. And when we live like Jesus lived and we serve like Jesus served, again, it brings glory to God and it brings people to Jesus. That's what we see happen. We see that in the early church, and we see that even today, and we want that to happen here at MCC. We serve like Jesus served. This is us. If this is not who we are yet, this is who we should be. We serve others. We don't just consume, we contribute. We have gifts, and we use them in the church and as the church. Why? Because we recognize that the church does not exist for us. We are the church, and we exist for the world. We serve like Jesus served. Let's stand together, please. Always have time to respond to Jesus at the end of every service. There's people who are heading to the sides of the auditorium who are there to serve you and pray with you and go to Jesus with you. But when we hear the stories of Jesus and what he's done for us, I always hope that our response is just worship for who he is. I say that a lot, but sometimes we just take it for granted. We go, yeah, I know Jesus died for me. Yeah, I know he serves. Yeah, I know he did all those things. But my goodness, can we wrap our minds around that the King of Kings and Lord of Lords came down to this earth not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. It's an amazing thing. It's such an amazing thing. If you're here today and you've never put your faith and trust in Jesus, I want you to know that Jesus loves you, and he died for you. He has an amazing plan for you, and that plan is to know him, to love him, and be loved by him, to be in relationship with him. That's the first step. Some of you might be here today and you've never really made that step. Say, yeah, I'm going to follow Jesus. I want to join the church. I want to be plugged in and follow him. If you're here, all you have to do is say, Jesus, I make you Lord of my life. I believe you are God. I believe you died and rose again. I choose to follow you. When you do that, you're a new creation. You start serving and start living like him, and it just changes everything. Jesus changes your life. For the rest of us, maybe we're here and we're not really living out what Jesus has asked us to live out. We're not really serving like Jesus served. We might have this mentality of, it's about me. And if that's you, just recognize that and be real with Jesus and say, Jesus, help me. I want to serve like you served. I want to have that heart. I want to have that mentality. I want to love people the way you love people. I want to get out and do what you call me to do. It takes obedience. It takes stepping out in faith. It can be scary serving. It can be scary doing stuff. It can be scary doing something new. But if Jesus has asked us to do it, it's going to be good if we step out and do it. He's always good and faithful. But we're going to take some time right now. Let's go to Jesus. Again, let's worship him for who he is, what he's done for us. Let's thank him that we have our church body together, that we can even gather in his name. Let's thank him and say, thank God for all the people who are stepping up and serving. Let's all say, God, help us be better. Help us be more like you. None of us have reached the Jesus level yet. We won't until we get to heaven, but we're trying to be better every day. There's never condemnation on these things. I hope none of you come and feel condemned, but we do want conviction where we say, God, I want to be better. I want to be like you. I want to serve like you served. So let's go to Jesus. Let's worship him. Let's be real with him. And let's do what he's asked us to do.